every once in a while, something comes around that has a way of bringing it all together. This happened recently, fairly recently, in my study of the past. I've noticed that, and a lot of people made this comment, that traditional archaeologists kept wanting to find violence in our prehistoric past. The Neolithic and on back into the Ice Age, they kept wanting to find violence there. So they decided that the reason that the Neanderthal people disappeared was because modern man wiped them out. Well, come to find out, no, that didn't happen. They made it. They interbred. You know, and I can see why, because the Neanderthal women were, sturdier, they were stronger, they could probably dress down an auroch in no time at all. And there might have been, that element of eroticism mixed in there as well, anything different kind of thing. And so they kept looking for violence, and they found exactly the opposite, and they didn't know what to do with it. There's a place in Israel where people would come and go out of Africa, and there were a lot of caves in this area. And so you'd have modern man in some of those caves, you'd have Neanderthals in some of those caves. And they all stayed together. They was all in the same vicinity, and there was no apparent serious disagreement among them, no animosity whatsoever. And this is of the mindset, or the being, really, of prehistoric peoples. Violence against another person was just unthinkable. So how did they maintain this very nonviolent tradition going back, who knows how long? What was it, and how did it maintain a state in which we lived in peace with one another? What happened? Apparently, Marija Gimbutas, Dr. Marija Gimbutas, found out. She was a archaeologist and folklorist from Lithuania. They carried on traditions that went back many tens of thousands of years. Then there was the Nazis, and then there were the Soviets, and the materialistic philosophies got mixed in, and also people were just frightened for their lives. So a lot of that came to an end during that era. She remembered as a little girl. People would get up in the morning and they'd step outside and they would lie down on the earth and kiss the earth. They had many practices, like you didn't break ground on your farm. You didn't break ground in springtime because the earth was pregnant and you didn't want to, get her upset, It would be hurtful. And so many other things. She collected folk songs that are different from folk songs anyplace else in the world. And it was all directed toward Mother Earth. When she began her research, archaeological research, digging up artifacts and whatnot, she focused primarily on the little feminine statuettes. And there were some male figures there, but for the large part they were animals and female forms. And she put it together and spent a long time on this. This wasn't slapdash. Spent a long time. And found a language in there. One of the first things that struck her is a lot of the markings on the little figurines. Those markings, you can see them on gravestones. Those same markings, you can see them on gravestones and built into the design of churches in her area of Lithuania. That really caught her attention. And she went on from there to study those markings, to study those markings in terms of the style of the figurine and where the figurine was found and so on and so on and so forth. And it was determined after a time, and it was a good determination, that up until about the time of the Bronze Age, we lived in a matriarchal society. Now, this didn't mean that women ruled with a heavy hand. You know, men do that. Women didn't do that. What you're talking about is mothers, grandmothers, if they lived long enough, great-grandmothers, in charge of things. A grandmother is not going to send her grandchild out to do battle. She will not do it. She'll stop the war before she would do that. And this was the basis of everything that happened in that society, that prehistoric society. It was a nurturing by the women. And everybody had their tasks to perform, and men acted like men. You didn't stop them from acting like men. They did what men do best, which is really competitive stuff. We're pretty good at that. At least most of us are. Some, including yours truly, don't have much use for it myself. But that's what men do. And the women, they held the people together. They were the leaders of the tribe. So you didn't have the type of government, you didn't have the type of economics and so forth that you have today. It was a whole different system. And it would be bizarre for many people to step back in that time and get your bearings, because it's a whole different show. We see a little bit of it here and there. There was a study done recently, and it was found that the women make the best CEOs and corporate presidents. Women are better at it than men are. There was a story from a recent Michael Moore movie where the economy was going downhill in this particular country. I want to say it was Iceland, maybe not. But it was going downhill fast. And the men were in charge of most of the banks, and so they got very competitive and aggressive and fought amongst themselves and tried to come out top dog, and what they did was ruin the economy. Their economy is on the brink of total collapse. And it's because of this aggressive attitude on the part of the men. All the banks folded, except for one. It was a bank operated by women. They knew how to work together, and they survived, when all the other banks went down. And so the government took an assessment of the situation, and they gathered up all the men who were responsible for the bank closings and just about devastated the economy. Brought them all together and shipped them off the island. Exiled them, and they were not to come back. And they put women in charge of the banking system, and they're doing fine now. That's the role of the woman. She nurtures. she fosters respect, integrity, right from the birth of a child and on up through his entire life. I invite you to read her books. There are three in particular. The Goddesses and Gods of Eastern Europe, I think was the name of the first one, something like that. Then the Language of the Goddess and the Civilization of the Goddess. And there are also some YouTube videos. Marija Gimbutas. There's videos on her and where she talks about what she found. It's all very interesting. That when we were under this matriarchal society, not a totalitarian society, but actually one based on nurturing, then we were at peace with the earth, we were in harmony with one another. At the beginning of somewhere about the beginning of the Bronze Age, all that changed. Men came to power, and it's been war and slavery and torture and the most abominable crimes against one another ever since. I think this holds a very large key into the future. You know, you can't go back. You can't go back and try to recreate prehistoric times. It's a different setting. But you can take what is of value there and apply it to the future, and also apply it to the present. This needs to be done.